Stephen Pollock. How are you, sir?
I'm good, brother. What's new?
So much. It's good to see you. I wanted to do this, and thanks for making time because I know you are a busy guy, and BPI is up all night, all day, all night, doing all the things. Um,
We never sleep, man. We're
Never sleep. No,
24/7.
no, no.
White papers nonstop, just
Just
printing.
cranking them out. White paper go burr. But yeah, I was wanting to do this before Bitcoin conference is a you know a misty dream of the past. But before we get into that, for those who may not know, and I mean, as you know, I'm getting off the ground with Trust Revolution. The audience is broader than our, perhaps typical Bitcoiner. And I'd love to get you, Stephen, to sort of lay out the raison d'etre, the why, the what, the how behind Bitcoin Policy Institute. Give us a sense of what you guys are about and what you're up to.
Yeah. Well, first, I wanted to say congrats on launching this new vertical, man. And
Thank you so much.
seems to be going well. So thanks for having me on. And
Pleasure.
excited to see where you go. I want to get you talking here in a little bit. I want
All
to I
right,
want
we'll
to
do
hear
it.
some things because we haven't caught up in a long time,
It has
man.
been a while. We'll do it. We'll do
Uh,
it. We'll do it live. F it. We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. Hey, so yeah, Bitcoin Policy Institute. I think we're like 4 years into this thing right now. Grant McCarty, David Zell, co-presidents, co-founders, and I was not too far after them. I was the first hire there, so I think I've got a uh, pretty good perspective. But we're still climbing the mountain. But I think we're able to start looking back. And Matthew Pines is our new executive director, and I'm sure, I don't know, for your audience, it may or may not ring some bells depending on who's listening, but if you
Please.
haven't, you should look up Matt. Um, so we launched this 501(c)(3), which is a nonprofit charity think tank, back, 4 years ago. They brought me on to help. And the reason for this was it was kind of a it was kind of a bet, kind of a gamble that one day the US government might start taking Bitcoin seriously. Uh, and when they do, we need them to take it seriously in the right kinds of ways versus the wrong kinds of ways. And so, the by time you realize, hey, we need a deep stable of some of the world's smartest uh, Bitcoin policy experts or uh, just Bitcoin experts in general, mining, energy, human rights, all the sorts of pillars of BPI. By the time you realize you need it, it's too late to build it. And so we had to begin sort of stacking the white paper, stacking the research, building credibility, getting some of the best and brightest in under our umbrella, increasing our reach, increasing our influence very early on. And it's it's happened way faster than I think any of us could have imagined. I think there was this idea that it could happen at any point in time. There were certain triggers that could click that would make this go to sort of this unknown, nobody really knows what Bitcoin is, to this is being discussed at some of the highest levels of government. But that hasn't really happened yet. Uh, and so we prepared for that. I mean, some of the I guess some of the tariff battles have maybe yellow flagged it in some areas, but it's just sort of organically happened. You know we had a presidential candidate go talk about Bitcoin at the largest Bitcoin conference in the world, and we had ETFs launch shortly before that. A number of dominoes began to fall, and a number of people began to pay attention. So that was kind of the point of departure, was like, we need to build this, and and it's not just defensive. It's also like we need Bitcoin at the time. I don't remember if it was even top 10 asset in the world. It may have been, and then it went down to, and then FTX melted down. And so anyway, it was let's say top 20-ish, top 25. This asset that's cracked the top 25. It's gaining momentum every cycle, and we have a lot of it domestically. Now we know, and we can, this is something kind of fun, interesting to talk about. Now we know roughly 40% of all Bitcoin is in the United States, whether it be citizens, companies, or individuals, companies, or the government. You know, we have a lot of it, and it's growing, and it's sort of, market cap. And in Washington, more people probably were familiar with Dogecoin than Bitcoin, and so there was an issue, an education issue, and and we needed to kind of flip that. And there's no Bitcoin is so interesting, but there's no CEO of Bitcoin to fund this kind of thing, or to run it themselves.
Right.
There's no marketing campaign.
Yep.
Um, and that creates vacuums and we see how some of those play out unless someone says, oh, I guess we could just do that. And we did. So we produce research, we advocate, we try to be a trusted advisor to those who are interested in doing interesting policy work, a place where they can, kind of grind it out and talk through things and learn about second and third order impacts of policy, what's wrong, what's right, why does peer-to-peer rights matter? What do you mean self-custody? Why is that important? That seems dangerous.
Mm.
We want to be a place where politicians cannot just get blasted for asking these questions or daring to challenge those assumptions, but to learn and to grow in their understanding. And we take the offensive there. We want to go to their offices and do all this sort of thing, government affairs people would do. But we also want to back it up with 100-page white papers on US China, and not just a paper, but written by someone who actually has the bona fides to back it up. There's like it, love it, hate it. There are certain standards in our nation's capital that are looked for, if you're going to be the type of person who could, testify in front of committee or something like that. And so
Right.
most of our fellows are our fellows. We have, I think we're up around 30 fellows now.
I had, you may know, I had Yale on a few weeks ago. Great
Yeah, yeah.
conversation. And so you guys are just, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm an avid supporter donor. It's just a fantastic group and team of folks. And you have stacked the decks in that regard for sure.
We're
What?
fortunate. Lots of
Mhm.
smart people in Bitcoin. And
Yes.
a lot of these guys are professors, they have other jobs. We try to give them a per diem, but more than anything, I think, especially early on, the last few years, it was like, man, you're telling me I can do my job, and maybe you guys buy out a course of mine so I can focus solely on the thing I'm most passionate about. And I'm not an academic like professionally, but I'm friends with a lot of them, and that's a dream come true for a lot of people. Like
Right.
you're allowing me to continue to work, but then to really like use my expertise within the thing I care the most about. And that I honestly, of anything we're doing, I'm just as proud of that, because these are just really incredible people. They're they're wonderfully intelligent. I mean,
Mhm.
just unbelievably competent in their content area. The philosophers, all the different groups, and we get to unlock them, and they when so we couldn't do without them. I mean, they're the foundation of BPI, and then we just kind of pick it up from there. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
And,
And thank you for your support, man. You've been
oh
there like
man,
since day one,
pleasure.
uh, and giving good feedback and helping a lot.
I mean, we'll get into this. I wish in some dream world Bitcoin could just Bitcoin, without the need or in some cases interference of other parties. But that ain't the world we live in. So I'm grateful for BPI. Well, I mean, I think you mentioned there are codes of conduct, there are means, there are methods in which one approaches DC. And, we'll talk about work at the state level too. But if I understand, you've recently established a presence. So you guys are on the ground, as it were, in Washington, DC now. And that's fairly recent, is it, Stephen?
Yeah, over the last year, really, we've migrated to Washington, beefed up our team significantly uh, by probably 4x our team size. And and when you get to that size, it's, we need people who live in, we only hire really in DC, uh, just because we need to be there. Uh, and, I think it's not all like, I don't want to play like presidents only here, but it matter. Like the last administration versus the new administration is a big difference, and in the demand and interest in Bitcoin
To
and
put it mildly.
what we do. So it's a little different. We spent a lot of time in Washington. I didn't, but Grant and David definitely did, and of course, uh, some of the like Matthew was already there, but all our new hires are there. We have a brick and mortar office there, and so it's nice to see. It's hard for me. I'm the only one who's not there a lot of
We're
times,
happy to
but
have you in Nashville. So
yeah, yeah. Thank you. Same. But a lot of the team. We have a government affairs director now, or I guess I should say, yeah, director of government affairs, Ken Egan. We've hired on within the last, I guess, 6 months, and he just completed an illustrious 20-year career at the CIA and retired. Um, Fantastic, fantastic guy, hardcore Bitcoiner, and yeah, I really love his presence. He's doing a great job, just like meeting with elected officials and can really unpack the strategic value of Bitcoin in the United States. Head of policy, Zach Shapiro, you guys are probably familiar with him, but has a legal background, still runs a law firm, and can really articulate, as well as anyone I know, sort of the day-to-day blocking and tackling of what we're fighting up, what we're up against and what we're fighting on the peer-to-peer front, on the non-custodial services side of things, and can make the case, as well as, like I said, as well as anyone I know. So the team there, external affairs, kind of internal comms. So we're assembling a really strong team, and I think I'm seeing the fruits of that, especially we have our event coming up this summer here in, I guess, 2 weeks. So I'm starting to see some of that myself, and I'm excited for everybody else to see it as well.
yeah, and I think in keeping with the theme of this whole thing, speaking for myself, I trust that you guys are doing the work that needs to be done. I don't want to throw shade on some of the other blockchain this and blockchain that, but I mean, I think what's so important about Bitcoin Policy Institute, and it's right there on the tin, is that the focus is where you and I think so many believe and know that it should be, which is on hard money, freedom money. With that, Stephen, so what are the biggest challenges that you guys are facing in getting particularly DC politicians to truly understand Bitcoin as something distinct, and I would assume to let go of what seems to be their innate desire to control? What are the biggest headwinds that you guys face in DC?
It's headwinds. You know, John, I'll start with the things I think are so the interesting thing about this question, I've kind of seen this play out, you know, well, ever since I've been involved with Bitcoin and policy. It doesn't seem, on one hand, all that unique to Bitcoin. It's just part of the issue with needing, with government and working in Washington D.C. It's the same. Nobody, we're not climbing a different a mountain here.
Sure.
It's inefficient. There's a million distractions and special interests, and that's where it gets tough for Bitcoiners. The special interest. There's no CEO. There's no corporate uh, structure that uh, it can kind of play the special interest game. I think, you know, we don't want this, and I don't think it has to happen, but it's sort of happened a little bit, that Bitcoin's become a political football. like everything else, in the current environment of our, the political environment of our country, everything's a political football. I'm probably using the wrong brand of pen. So,
Canceled.
whatever. It's sort of, yeah. So, I'm not trying to, um, but I think that's the big part of it. I also think that all those things are true. And there's probably some unique elements to this battle we're facing. A lot of Bitcoiners are going to say, what about like the fact that the government doesn't like the idea of Bitcoin and what it does, the sort of freedoms and decentralization that it provides. And I think that's probably part of it too. I mean, I don't think it's helping anything at all. That there's probably factions within the government who are not so thrilled about the
They
idea
can't
of
put their thumb on it.
Bitcoin's.
Yeah.
Right, right. And so, how much of it is that, and how much of it is just, you know, they're not greasing the wheels for us by any means. So there's some of that for sure. And then there's the unique, uh, every industry is kind of has its unique blend of trade groups, and we're new.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the other thing, like Bitcoin, crypto, everyone is brand new with lots of money to throw around, and that's chaos. It creates a lot of chaos because we're doing everything for the first time. Um, and we're not, you know, people think, oh, this group, you're with that and you're with, this. You guys should all agree on legislation and who should vote for what. And you're like, no way. We actually, philosophically are on completely different pages. We want completely different things. And so it's hard for, I mean, you can imagine. Well, actually, I know because when I came in with BPI, I was a Bitcoiner. I cared about Bitcoin. I was really interested in it, and had been, researching and going to meetups and all that kind of thing for a long time. Um, but I didn't know anything about this, like the industry. I didn't know anything about, the different players and all that. I just thought Bitcoin was cool, like like most people, like
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
normal
Yeah.
people.
Right. And I mean, 4 years ago, I mean, it's these past 4 years have been a long decade, depending on how you look at it, right? So, I mean, much has changed since you got started.
Right. I mean, I had no idea who anybody was. Like all the, whether within Bitcoin, like the sort of, um, you know, the cool kids. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know. And then on the, so on the political side, I understood that a little more quickly once
Sure.
I got
That's your
going.
background. Yeah.
But I didn't know which trade group. I didn't know. I mean, I had no idea. So I actually can imagine if you're just U.S. Senator's office. You've never heard of this stuff. Last time you ran
Hmm.
for office, whatever, 4 years ago, this wasn't even a thing, and now it's on everybody's everybody's platform, everybody's campaign. You just had to say a couple things about it so that everybody knew where you came
Without
down.
looking foolish, which they're not
Yeah,
given
like,
to
I have no
do.
idea what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Now, not everybody. There's some that like Lummis and others that have been there for a long time, but like generally speaking, most people are they're like, I don't know what the hell this stuff is. My grandkids, or kids kind of mess with, I don't know, I got a couple $100 on Robinhood, and suddenly it's just blasting you in the face. And you're like, just can somebody figure out which groups are what and what these guys are talking about? Like, I have
Yeah.
no idea. And so I think that's part of it. I mean, it's a massive education issue. I think, I think that's probably more than like the deep state slurry of like,
Yeah.
we don't want these guys. Um, which definitely exists. And more than anything else, it's like keep not having even a kindergartner level understanding of what we're talking about. Um, just exacerbates everything else. How could you possibly know which groups are reliable and or who's reliable for this but not this and this but not
Right.
this? You have no idea. So you can be taken advantage of, you can be lied to,
Got some
you
money
can
coming in
just
from XRP. I mean,
yeah. Uh, you know, you're I would assume if it were me, I'm probably thinking, well, this is going to be gone in a year. Let's get while the getting's good.
Mm,
And, you know, sometimes that's probably the right play. You're like, oh, this is the hot topic. This will by next in 2 years, no one's even heard of this stuff again.
yeah.
Like, let's
Juice it
wet our
while you
beak,
can.
you know?
Well, what's I mean for those and
Yeah.
with name names or don't. I'm guessing don't. But are you seeing, Stephen, a pattern for those who get it at any level or any sort of sphere within DC? I mean, are there attributes of those who get it, want to do the work, and are advocating? Or as you say, is it just lost in sort of the chaos of being an elected federal politician?
Yeah. Um,
What makes a Cynthia Lummis? Let's just sort of
right,
pick
right. No,
Cynthia for a moment. And
yeah. I, you know, I don't think it's, Sean, I don't think it's that different to, I don't think it's that like, I forgot the right way to say it. I don't think it's like specific to Bitcoin, I guess I'd say. I think mm, good elected officials, those who are good at their job and have, uh, you know, high quality staff around them. Those you can have both. I mean, you can be the best U.S. senator ever
hmm,
and not have a good staff. And in fact, you can be like a, not so great, I don't know. And you're as good as, and I think most would say like, I'm only as good as my staff,
sure,
because it's a big job. I think most like executives would say that too,
right,
if they were
certainly,
completely honest.
yes.
So I think there's that. Um, I think my favorite type of elected official, personally, are those that care about their constituents. They realize um, what's sort of, important to them, what's good for their state, or
Mm,
district, the businesses that are there. Um, they want to see the area thrive. They want to protect it from, sort of predatory type of groups. And so I think that instinct, which honestly, I think like most people who run for office show up to run for office thinking that way. I don't think it's, or at least believing that they think that way.
Mr. Smith goes
And
to
then,
Washington.
yeah, and then things start happening and
Yeah,
um, you forget that or you never really develop that. So anyway, Lummis, for instance, I think obviously she's smart. I think it's the same type of things that drive, individuals into being interested in Bitcoin. Usually pretty sharp, uh, or the opposite, I guess. Like, yeah, mid curve. No, not many
yeah,
mid
yeah,
curvers.
yeah. Midwit.
So, yeah. Anyway, I think, yeah, I think just being,
She has family that I'm
yeah,
sure has
being
helped a great
family.
deal. Yeah,
You've got kids that are interested in it.
yep,
I'm trying to give you a broad answer, just
yeah.
because
No,
I don't meet directly with a lot of the elected
sure,
leaders,
sure.
but I think what I was trying to go with was like, I think I'm thinking about Tennessee,
Mhm.
uh, and the conversations I've had with elected leaders here, just because they're my, you know, representatives. A lot of it is just they think it's interesting. They see the value. They've got family members that are kind of, passionate about it, or they've kind of heard through the grapevine, or they're familiar with the sort of human rights HRF type of
Right.
use cases, and I think they may not even. I've met, like I don't completely get this, but I can tell there's something there. I can tell this is serious and significant, and so I don't. That's where I was trying to go. I don't need an elected official to like be a Bitcoiner. I really don't. I don't think that's the ask. If
Mhm.
so, I think that's a little like maybe,
It's a high
maybe not.
bar.
Like that's for
Yeah.
them to decide. But and so I don't. I'm not like how much Bitcoin do they hold? Like how long they've been. What I want from an elected official, regardless of the issue, is for them to hear me out. And if I'm able to make a compelling case, then they take it seriously because I take it seriously, and they represent me in government. And so I think, you have the Lummises of the world, which are, I mean,
Few
we're
and far
spoiled
between.
we're spoiled rotten with her.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
ever, I mean, most industries, I said to somebody the other day, they'd cut off their left arm to have a Senator Lummis in their corner in DC. It's just
Hmm.
she's a unicorn. And so setting that aside, I think like the sort of normal representatives that we're talking about is, let's take this seriously. There's the mining side, the energy side, the human rights side. Uh, I talked to a U.S. senator's wife one time, and she was like, we were talking at this event, and she was just like, my kids play around with crypto stuff or whatever. I just don't get it. And I was like, well, and for whatever reason, it's fresh in my mind. I said, this was a while back, not too long after the U.S. left Afghanistan. And I said, imagine being a woman just like yourself in Afghanistan, and uh, the U.S. leaves, and you're suddenly overnight, your entire country's just turned upside down, and you can, again, for I don't care what you think about Afghanistan, but this is what happened. I don't
Right.
care if you think we should have
Yes.
left or not, or should
Yeah.
never have been there,
We did.
but this is what happened.
Yeah.
The U.S. left, and everybody was left high and dry, and suddenly the banks, the entire economy are just flipped on their head, and you're a middle class, upper middle class woman with a family, and you're like, we got to get the hell out of here. I'm like, well, what are you going to do? You can't go you can't get your money out of the bank. Are you going to carry you get some gold bars, or are you going to tape them to your legs? Like, you
Yeah.
can't get through customs. You can't. And so I said, ma'am, for the first time in world history, someone like you could memorize 12 words, go anywhere in the world, and take their
Start
life
again.
savings with them and start over.
Yeah.
I said, it doesn't mean it would be easy to do it, but it does mean it's actually possible.
Right.
And she was just like, she kind of stared at me and kind of finished talking and walked off. 30 minutes later, a couple staffers from this elected officials team came over and they're like, what did you say to so and so's wife? I was like, I don't know. I mean, we talked for a while. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
They're like, well, I'd order like $7 on Bitcoin. And so that's
Yeah.
all I ask, right?
Yeah.
Is if we make a compelling case, dig in a little bit, verify what I'm saying, and like, you know what? This is a powerful tool. I don't completely understand it. I don't know if it's going to be here in 10, 20 years yet, but this is definitely interesting. And that's, I think that's all we ask.
Yeah.
And I
And
think if
that's,
we
man,
do
what a
that with
powerful
enough,
anecdote.
man,
Yeah.
if we do that with enough, and I think we're starting to reach that point, people are like, damn, I got to pay a little more attention to this.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
think it's a great, yeah, strong anecdote and an excellent point to make, which is there are no easy, I think, answers to addressing, I'm reminded of my conversation with Yale, not to put words in his mouth, but, he rightly, I think, calls out that the ideal role in his case, in consumer advocacy is to advocate for and to promote laws, regulations that restrain government, not that we need to run around enabling or asking, government to do things for, but just not to do things anti.
Hmm.
And I think that in combination with, as you say, appealing on a human level, and these are individuals who need an emotional connection, as we all do, to things that they wish to invest energy in. So if we go from there, Stephen, to let's dig into the swamp a little bit. So, um, there are clashes and conflicts that we see between White House, SEC, Treasury. Something bubbled up, I think it was earlier this week from Secret Service regarding mixers. Here too, broad question. Um, what is your take or read on how much of that is just the normal DC noise? How much of it is, okay, we're seeing them sort of come on side to Bitcoin, and where is there still a lot of work to do? So sort of assess, if you will, where Bitcoin sits relative to these powers and these agencies.
Yeah, that's a big
It
question,
is a big
and I
one.
think one that I think that's it's timely. I think that's one we're all trying to suss out right now, in real time. And I think you're right to kind of zoom out and look. Let's not look at like one specific story or one, strategic movement, and use that to interpret the whole. But on the whole, there does seem to be uh, a shift, in posture, and uh, I'm gonna make it some assumptions, but I think when you look at some of the executive orders, and when you look at just the political tides beginning to turn on some of these freedom and privacy issues, that takes a while to digest its way through the system, work its way through the system, and for you know the signaling to sort of like you know uh, make its way. And I think we're starting to probably see some of that. Um, I think a big, an interesting thing we can talk about with the summit is VPI. We reannounced, I guess, last week. Yeah, seems like it's been
What is
three
time?
weeks since
Yeah.
last week. Yeah, last week was a long month, right? Uh, that the deputy director of the CIA, Michael Ellis, will be speaking at the Bitcoin Policy Summit here in a few weeks, and so that's raised a lot of eyebrows.
Tinfoil hats going up.
Right, right. Um, and so, you know, on the intelligence side, which I'm not going to speak too much about because I don't know much about it, but I think when you begin to see Bitcoin viewed as a tool of statecraft rather than a hindrance to statecraft, then that's when this starts to get a little interesting, and you start to see not just the elected officials, but the agencies and some of the support groups, the DOJ, Treasury, intelligence community begin to you know we don't need a we don't need a 180-degree about face. I mean, 5 degrees is a huge
Yes.
difference in perspective on uh, on Bitcoin. So I think we're starting to see some of that, and I hope it continues.
What are some of the, in as much as you can share, what are some of those glimmers of hope? What sorts of positive turns or attitude changes have you observed?
Well, I don't think this is the answer you're looking for, but this is the one I'm going to give. I think the biggest, brightest version of this was what happened last week in Vegas.
Yeah, and let's go there.
The
Give me.
vice president.
I wanted to touch
Yeah.
on that. Give me a recap. Give us a recap, please, of the Bitcoin conference.
Yeah. Well, let's just go straight. Let's not bury the lead. The vice president of the United States came and spoke at the Bitcoin conference, and he did a hell of a job. Um, and I'm looking on my phone because I've got a few notes that I took during the
Please.
speech. Um, but first, I want to highlight that, and this is like my bit right now. Everyone I talk to, uh, the president spoke last year. The president did not speak last year. A guy running for president spoke last year on a campaign trail as a campaign stop. And so, if you're out in Tennessee or in the area, and there's 30 something thousand people, and you can go spike Gary Gensler's, football 4 or 5 times, and they all get amped up, and you can make a bunch of promises that if you lose, whatever, but if you win, what the hell? Sure. And hey, I'm giving the guy credit. Like he kept as far as I can see, pretty much every promise he made, and props for that. That's a good start, regardless of what you think of the guy, President Trump. Hey, came in, he said a bunch of things, and he did them. I appreciate that because you can get those who don't do any of that, or just don't make any promises.
Yes.
And
Much
so,
safer path.
but I'm the point that I'm trying to make is like, I mean, it's pretty basic, but he was not president. He was running for office, and it was a campaign stop. Last week in Las Vegas, it was a sitting vice president, which is a major difference. He's not running for office at all for years, and what there's no immediate political gain is the other side of it. It's not like, oh, let me go win over all these Bitcoiners. They already won. They were won last year. So why are you there? Well, it's a little more sophisticated than that, right? It's a little more, maybe there's a little more going on there. That would be my thought. Now, the other side of it is, I looked up yesterday, JD Vance has plus 250 odds to be the next president of the United States. Next closest is plus 1,000, and that's a whole field. That's the Gavin Newsom's, AOC's, and Don Jr.'s of the world are all like plus 1,000. So against the field, JD Vance is like 30% odds to be the next president of the United States. So I think that's because of what happened the year before. I think people are like, oh yeah, presidential caliber people come speak at these Bitcoin conferences all the time. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
It's unheard of. And not only did he speak, he the first half of the speech he's kind of get going, and I think he ended up kind of going off script, and when he did get off script, I mean he was killing it. He talked about Bitcoin. He said that he kind of hit Gensler a few times, rehashed that, got some crowd momentum going, and he started talking about why Bitcoin's valuable or why Bitcoin's important. And he discussed expanded access to banking. He said Bitcoin is a hedge against central government control. Oh,
certainly sounds good. Yeah.
Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? A hedge against inflation, a hedge against private sector censorship and banking. He called Bitcoiners digital pioneers. He said he wants to listen to our industry. He said that Bitcoin deserves the industry, Bitcoin network deserves the respect and support from the government versus being torn down by bureaucracy. And then he encouraged Bitcoiners to be engaged in the 2026 election. So
consider the incentives.
I mean, you gotta remind everybody,
yeah,
the GOTV, but hey, I thought, some of that is, I mean, I don't think he was reading from a teleprompter during most of that. I think that was him talking, and even if it was teleprompter or whatever, it doesn't take away from it, but it does add. I think if you're just riffing and you're dropping that kind of thing. So the guy gets it. Seems to get it. Smart guy. And he also happened to mention one of my favorite think tanks in the Washington area too. So I was excited to hear that.
Shout out. Nice. I mean, and I think, we could spend a whole lot of time probably on the conference. I sat this one out. And I think, understandably, there's the buzz, the negative buzz, I suppose, about the degree to which it has become a political event as opposed to an industry conference or a freedom money conference, sort of, drifting away from the ethos to industry to now, as you say, statecraft and politics. But I think one of the things, and this I know is a tough one, is the strategic Bitcoin reserve. I mean, I think, correct me, Bitcoin Policy Institute was largely, if not predominantly, behind the advocacy of the SBR. It didn't go the way I think, that a lot of people wanted. It would have been a dreamy scenario if, in some measures, not everyone will agree, if it was sort of pure and simple, but, digital assets and ETFs and, all the fingers got into the pie. Where did this thing begin, Stephen, and where are we realistically? I mean, and I don't mean to use that as the ultimate measure of success, but I think for many it is. So, sort of take us through an abbreviated history of how it got going and where we are, and maybe where we're headed on this.
Sure. I can give you the history as far as I know it. And I'm sure there's there's parts of the story that I'm either not familiar with or can you hear me okay,
Yes.
by the way? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That others could chime in, but the first thing I'll say about the SBR is that I think this was a baptism by fire for everyone who is new to political realities. Um, and so it's sort of like, welcome to the big leagues, you know?
Be careful what you ask
Um,
for.
yeah, be careful. And, personally, I think it was a huge win. I'll just say that. I'll tell you how I feel about it. I think it was a massive win and a little shocked uh, that's I'm shocked and I'm not because my sort of like vibe with legislation and with this kind of thing is that like nothing's ever as great as you think it's going to be and nothing's ever as bad as you think it might be. Um, Sometimes, yeah, I mean, there's a world where you get the cleanest, perfect version of the SBR, and there's a world where you get something a lot crazier. And we saw both of those, right? And I think you saw the whole industry just roller coastering.
Absolutely.
And yet again, I'm like, hey, well, like, welcome to the big leagues, man. This isn't a one-off case. Many such cases, as they say. So that's kind of my opinion, which could be wrong,
Yeah. No,
disagree
no.
with.
Well,
It's
and
totally
where
fine.
where is it? What's the state of things today? Because I'll confess, I've sort of lost track of where it is on that roller coaster.
Yeah, well, we have a strategic Bitcoin reserve via executive order, and the goal is with Senator Lummis's Bitcoin Act to codify it. Obviously, executive orders are can be overturned pretty easily, and so it's a win. I think it's viewed as more of a temporary win that paves the way to do a little more serious legislative work, like to put it simply. So there are other bills that are out there, market structure bills and Stablecoin Genius Act bills that seem to have a lot of political capital pushing those. You can think they're important, you can not think they're important, you can hate them, you can love them, but that's just the truth is like that's a bit major focus right now. But at the same time, the Bitcoin Act has a lot of momentum too and it's a little more difficult, it seems like. I don't know exactly, unpack exactly why, but I think it's just as important, probably more important than any of the others personally. But yeah, that's the state of play right now. Uh,
Do you buy into, and again, I realize it's probably never this binary, but do you buy into the observation that a lot of this is about Bitcoin bad for U.S. dollar hegemony? I always struggle with that word. Stable coins good for. I mean, how much of that is at play here?
I don't think that's the case. I think that it's stablecoin good for US dollar,
Hmm.
and that's it.
Okay,
I don't think it's, and I'm thinking, I think it's actually Bitcoin good, but stablecoin
better.
good right now.
Right, right, right. Odd like
uh,
stablecoin good.
yeah. Unless Satoshi, pops up and starts buying US treasuries. Uh, so
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of that. Um, and hey, the stablecoin I'll say like I think it's a little more intuitive for politicians. They're like, "Oh, I get that. It's just a dollar that's digital
Digital
but not a
dollar. Right.
CBDC." And like, "Huh, we need more of those out there." I get why they're like, "Oh, yeah, that it's easier than like uh
Yeah,
the
conceptually.
cypherpunk, decentralization and so I
Limited
don't think
supply.
it's
What?
I don't think
Yeah,
it's like sinister or uh I don't, and again, I don't know every elected
sure. Of
official in
course.
Washington, but those that I do know, I'm thinking, I think they're, yeah, I think they're, I think they just think stablecoins are important. I don't think it has that much to do. And maybe, if anything, like, oh, this would be good for Bitcoin because it's all, everything for digital assets is, if it's good for digital assets, it's good for, all digital assets.
Yeah, and I
That's
mean,
my my thought.
you and obviously you and I would take issue with that and pick it to pieces, but I appreciate where someone, as you say, who's just coming up the learning curve, would think that that's a rising tide. On the note of CBDC, and again, it's tough to ask you to sort of speak on behalf of of this massive bureaucracy, and I won't. But any observations on creeping tendency or desires to turn stable coins into a CBDC by another name? What's your sort of read on the situation there?
I have no idea.
Fair.
Specifically, like I don't have
Not
like
that they would come out and say it to you at a dinner party, right?
right,
Like, we're going to
right,
backdoor this thing into a Chinese style
yeah. And if they were gonna,
CBDC.
yeah. But I think, my guts like, well, of course, somebody's trying to do something like that.
Right.
Uh, and, you know, I think you look at the track record of a lot of these elected officials, they're pro CBDC or they're pro stable coins and pretty anti CBDC. And so I like to think that, I mean, CBDCs do not have a good reputation among most politicians.
Yeah.
Like, I think and we need to continue. I'm not saying all of them, whatever, but
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
I think, I
the
think
Marxists are probably going to love it. Yeah. But
they're pretty well acquainted with the like if we've, and I think we need to keep it up. But it's like CBDCs a few years ago, they're like, oh, what the hell's that? Now everybody knows, like, oh yeah, don't touch that with the 10-foot pole.
right. Right.
Uh,
Good.
that's political rat poison.
Yes.
Um,
At the very least, just
I hope they think
negative brand
that. I
affiliation.
think they think that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I don't now, the whole like, okay, I'm working on this and they're working on this and oh, whoops, that's what we want to avoid. I don't I don't think we're close to something like that happening, but you know,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to have some people who are way more vetted than I am. Um, we we try to keep tabs on all that stuff, but primary mission, man, is just you know focusing on Bitcoin and telling people about it and trying to protect our rights to use it, which I know is a controversial topic, but yeah, I love the question.
If it is, let's get
What do you
controversial.
think? What do you think about some of this stuff? What are you hearing?
Ah, man. I mean, I think it's easy to fall into a place where more control equals good. And certainly, I think for certain factions of the government who, in light of lockdowns, in light of censorship, broad censorship, in light of a lot of demonstrated behaviors over the last 4 or 5 years in particular, it's the slippery slope. I look to the UK, I look to the entire Commonwealth, and it's just staggering what's going on. I mean, I think I don't have the number at hand, but the UK is on track to lock up, I think, over 1,000 individuals a month for mean
God.
tweets. I mean, it is just bonkers. And so, on the one hand, I think don't count it out. Are we that special? Perhaps not. On the other, I think, let's not succumb to the black pill. But I think, we look around our borders and elsewhere. We look north to Canada, and a lot of crazy totalitarian behaviors. And so,
Mhm.
they're not going to come advertising it, but I do worry. I do worry, and
Yeah, I think it's healthy.
and
I
I
worry
think
too, man.
here too, it's a big one, and not sure how much exposure you've had to this, but one of the questions that I put it out to Noster this morning, saying I was going to be chatting with you, and one of the questions that came back was, let's say, and I think it is absolutely demonstrably true, that Bitcoin Policy Institute is winning in as much as we can use that word. I mean, it's a tough battle. Do more friendly government policies and, let's say, ETF adoption, does this get us closer to the risk of a 6102 attack, which, for those that don't know, 1933, President Roosevelt, um, you know, demanded the reclamation, or you prohibited the hoarding of gold bullion certificates, requiring citizens to turn their gold over at a fixed price to increase the money supply. So, in short, 6102 attack. Where do you feel we are there? I mean, is that something you as BPI think about from a policy standpoint? Or as you say, is it, look, we're going to do the best we can to advocate for the good stuff, and we'll hope for the best in the other areas?
Yeah. I think it's a good question. I think it's a great question, and something that it's a wise question. Uh, I think that um, if it's like kind of a three-part answer. I think that if we, as Bitcoiners, thought we were, Bitcoin was going to continue to grow and scale and become what many envision it can become, and governments weren't going to get involved or want it. We'll start with companies, individuals, companies, governments weren't going to, want to have some, or wonder about what it could do or not do for them. Then I think we're nuts. So I think, let's play it out. I think this is sort of an inevitable step. Governments, world powers, at some point saying, we have some Bitcoin. Should we take it from our people? Should we ban it? Should we like it? Asking all of those questions. And so I don't think you can look at. I think it's incorrect to look at advocates and you know, whether it's lobbyists, advocates, think tanks, groups like BPI or other groups, and say you're telling you're telling them the bit. You're spilling the beans in Washington D.C. Uh, and you're increasing awareness. And this thing that was going to be secret that the
Putting
government
a
was never
target
going
on
to
our
figure
back.
out, now you're putting a target on our back, right? I think that's actually incorrect. That I don't have. I struggle to follow that logic. So this is the most direct answer I can give. However, I think if we were to say, Bitcoin's going to continue to scale and flourish, governments, corporations, whoever are going to become increasingly interested. It goes from kind of the fly buzzing around the head to, like, something we take a little more seriously. And like I said before, well, what does that mean when they start to take it seriously? Are they going to fall in love with it and think this is the most, like, this is this new freedom technology. I can't wait to unleash it for our,
This is what
United
the
States
founding
citizens.
fathers would
And
have loved, and here we
right.
are. Yeah.
Uh, man, finally. Um, or or something, something sinister, or something in between. I think the best way to hedge against poor outcomes is to begin building uh, a, an understanding first. This isn't dangerous to the country. This is something that could be good for the country. Look at everyone who owns it and uses it, and not just so number go up, but because it's important to us um, that we have the freedom to self-custody this, that the government doesn't interfere with this,
Yes.
that um, we can have developers that are working on open source projects, that we can have developers that are building non-custodial tools. These are essential freedoms that we must protect at the individual level, but also make that case that this isn't just good for us. This isn't Second Amendment. In case, you guys come for us, we got all the guns too, but
Hmm.
this is good for the country and helps guarantee our own, this, like, decentralization protects us. It's hard. Uh, um, like a thousand straws type of thing, bundle of straw type thing. So I think, sorry, bundle of sticks.
Right. Right.
From we have emerging existential threats from other nation states, from whatever, AI, from quantum, all these sort of crazy things that are happening. And don't you think single points of failure are probably not the direction we want to head? Centralization is, I'm just kind of riffing right
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
but like
yeah.
we start making these cases and we start having champions. The worst thing that can happen, the absolute worst thing that can happen, was for this thing to go, Bitcoin to reach the highest levels of government and get on their radar. And nobody knows what the hell it is. No one knows who to talk to ask important questions. No one knows which parts are important or what's not or how
Yeah,
it
they're
all
all listening
works.
to Elizabeth Warren instead of
It's
listening to BPI.
terrifying.
Yeah.
So to me, that's terrifying. Is you have a, like right now, let's talk about it right now. Number five asset in the world. I know it's probably not after the last 24 hours, 12 hours,
We'll be
but
back.
yeah, we will be back. Number five, on its way to number one, the most powerful country, I think, in the history of civilization. President's talking about it, vice president's talking about it, everybody's talking about it, and nobody knows what the hell it is. And nobody knows who to talk to or trust. And so you never know who's going to walk into that room. We just felt that. We felt just a little taste of that in the aftermath of the election, when it was like, you never knew who was in the Oval Office talking about SBRs and all sorts of other executive orders. And you saw
Right.
how that played out. Imagine that at scale. And so I think it's actually, I think, just to recap, it was inevitable that the White House is going to talk about Bitcoin if you think Bitcoin is what it is. It's inevitable that the national security apparatus is going to be talking about Bitcoin, that it was going to be sliding across their desks at some point. And I think it's better to have had the conversations, to have the introductions, to have the education, a baseline education. And you build that in Congress, you build that in the, departments, you find allies that you find people, there may be a Sean Yeager in the Department of Justice, there may be people, there's Bitcoiners that are in, the national security, space, that they care and they get it. And they've been here for a long time. They've been here longer than I have. And let's find these people and let's give them resources to help them have more influence. And like, you need to talk to this guy. Listen to him when he's talking about Bitcoin. No, you're not going to do that. You ban self-custody out of your mind. You understand the implications of that for our country. You understand what it's going to do and how that's going to help our rivals and hurt our allies. And so you begin to, and we're like, oh yeah. And I think that's why we're here. That's why
Mhm.
BPI exists, is to help bridge that gap and to, if it's quarterback, if it's coach on the sideline, whatever metaphor you want to use, to help coordinate the players in the field. And when we see a gap, we'll find a player and get him in. And so that's my answer to that. Um, and I think it's a great question. I don't dismiss the question. And I think if you haven't been, kind of doing some of this work, it probably is hard to see, like,
Absolutely.
are we tipping our hand here? Like,
Right.
and that doesn't mean that the fight's over. That doesn't mean that none of those things, are going to happen, or that, you know, and I think the other side of it is, you talk about a 6102. I think personally, I think that's why an SBR is important. Um, you don't have any gold, and everybody around does. You're kind of like, man, I wonder if they should give me a little bit of that. If you
Yeah.
have your own stash, then maybe you're a little less likely to uh to go foraging.
Yeah.
So
Although, I think in fairness, it didn't stop them from coming after the gold. But I mean, I think,
it's true.
I think
It's
as
true.
California, I don't know. I've had some conversations with some people about this recent state level proposed legislation in California that if your crypto sits on an exchange for 3 years, and is that seizure, is that custody, is that whatever. But I think those are
Well, it
going to
sounds like
happen.
theft is what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, which they tend to excel at. Well, I mean, so as we wrap up, Steve, this has been terrific. I've asked a lot of hard questions, so let me ask you one more. in the spirit of Bitcoin, and don't trust, verify, because some would say, how much trust, I got this question, how much trust should we place in politicians to support, not impede Bitcoin? My answer is zero. Um, and so if you look out 5 years, let's say, what are you hopeful for? What is your best case scenario in terms of the right levers, the right tools being in place at presumably the federal level, so that we don't have to trust, so that we can verify that we as individuals are safe and sound in the use of our money, of our Bitcoin?
That's a
What's
big
what's
question.
yeah, what's BPI? What do you think? What does great success for BPI look like in 5 years? Let's put it that way.
I think that I think the more of the stuff that we just get codified via Congress, um, and hey, I get it. People are like, we don't have to ask permission to do these things. We don't have to, we don't need to, like, it's like, um, we don't need to ask permission to use custodial tools and these sorts of things. And I get that. I agree. At the same time, like, people are being rounded up and thrown in prison for, for building these types of services. And so, I think there's some legal battles we need to win. There's some legal precedent we need to set. And I think, you know, so that's the Justice Department side. I think executive orders are still helpful. Um, you know, Even just the signal is helpful of like, oh, this is what we're doing. Uh, for other elected officials and agencies, they do last sometimes, and they help encourage the legislative process. So I think we need to get, the Bitcoin Act done, and just codify as much of this as we can. I think we have, right now, we're in the midst of like, I hope it's not true, but it could be. I know some people laugh, but I think this is like a very unique window of opportunity where we have political alignment, or we have people who care, people in office who care, who at least want to try to help. And I think you have to seize that, because you might not get it again. And if you're the type of person who thinks we got some hard battles down the road, right? Over the next 5, 10 years as an industry, then you want to make hay in the meantime when you can. Um, let's just say whatever. Let's say there's a massive political blowback against the industry. Let's say, at some point there's a different political party in charge with the majority, um, and they're pissed off, um, or just doing what they already
Yeah.
like to do. uh, like, and I'm not saying one or the other. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
look
Just
at
doing
what
what
they're
they do.
doing, and
Yeah. Strike all the
uh,
EOs and yeah.
right. And so, I think so. Right now, get some of these things done, get these priorities done,
Laws passed, I
and
assume. I
laws
mean,
passed.
EOs aren't
Yeah,
enough.
Bitcoin Act, reinforce self custody, get it codified into law, um, clear up the sort of vague regulatory uh, language that's it has been used to weaponize against the industry and debunk the industry. When the rules are gray, it's easier to, you kind of bend them around and use them, for whatever you want, against whoever you want. And so when the rules are clear, it's not just, you always hear like, we need to know the regulation so we know what to do as a business, which is true. It's kind of like the
Regulatory
tariffs. Like,
clarity.
you heard like, the tariffs. It was like, I don't care what the number is. Let's just set it so I can
Yeah.
figure out how to run my business based
Yeah.
on it. Like,
Yeah.
I read something that was like, I don't care if the tariff's 60%. I'm going to run a successful business. But if they're going from 60 to 30 to 80 to 20, that's when I mean, nobody can adapt, and survive.
Rules of the
And so it's
game.
the same thing with regulation. Like, I don't care what the regulations are, but I need to know what they are.
Mhm.
in order to, but the other side is when they're unclear, I can use them to kind of make them say whatever I want. So there's that. And then the big one, they're all big, but the other big one is bipartisanship. Um, I think then that's something we focus on. We're C3 in our charter. We're nonpartisan. We can only work with people who work with us. You can only have a conversation with someone who will talk to you. But we have found allies on both sides of the aisle. It's no surprise, like Republicans are and have been like a little more open to that conversation. But we've seen a lot of Democrats start to engage and get it. And you know, I had a conversation with an elected official this year who's kind of working on something, and I just bumped into him. Um, and he was BPI and different things. And he's like, "Yeah, I've been thinking I'm going to be talking about this. I'm being vague on purpose. I'm going to be talking about this. And, what do you think?" And I said, and this is a Democratic Party member. I said, I was kind of, basically like, what's the most important thing that I can be talking about when it comes to Bitcoin? And I was like, well, there's a lot. I said, but one of them, that's important to me is that this does not become a political football that we get kicked back and forth from one party to the other. And when somebody's in charge, we get beat up and we got like that. I don't want that. I don't think anybody wants that, but that's the scariest part.
Yeah.
And so I think reaching out, like the work's not done, man. Yeah, okay, one party cares. Vice presidents and presidents are talking about it. Like we still have another half the country that should understand and should appreciate Bitcoin. And I think they can. I think there's many. I think just because you vote for one party or another party doesn't mean you're like um, not the type of person who could understand or appreciate Bitcoin. Or I think it's important. I actually completely disagree with that premise. I think I can disagree with people on a lot of different things and find common ground um, on these important like foundational principles, like being able to do what you want with your money,
Yes.
being able to hold money that you know can't be just
Debased.
inflated to
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
That across the world, um, Bitcoin has proven itself to be one of the most powerful human rights tools that we have, and one of the few.
Yes.
um, and so I think there are. So yeah, to, I kind of went around. I'm sure you're shocked, but
No, no,
in
no. It's
five
good.
years, I think. I mean, in 5 years, I think we need champions on both sides of the aisle. I think this needs to become. I think Bitcoin and Bitcoin network. It'd be great if it became something that's like uh, we've sort of risen past the. I mean, kind of like the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like, oh, okay, like nobody's against the internet. We need that.
Right. The postal service was
uh,
once very anti, but here we are, right? I mean, so
right.
yeah.
And I think that would be incredible. I think it's possible, is what I'm trying to say. I think it's possible. I think there's a lot of work. I think there's a lot of things that can go wrong sideways, but I think that's what we're trying to do. Um, that's what we're trying to do. And I think like I said, we've worked with everyone who'll work with us, and we always will. And we appreciate those people, those elected officials. Like we're we're very grateful because there's a lot of things they can spend their time on, and there's a lot of things that are important that they can spend their time on, not
Mhm.
just special interest. And so we appreciate that, but we're also going to work with we want to work with everybody because I think it's that important. So that's one. Yeah, and I think codifying a lot of this, strike while the iron's hot,
Yep.
you know, hope for tomorrow, but prepare for other
Eventualities. Yeah.
scenarios,
Yeah.
eventualities, and because you never know what's around the corner. So I think if you can get some wins right now, you got it. Like you got to
Yeah.
seize the moment, and that's why I think this Bitcoin Act is just super important.
Yeah.
There's so much in there. That would be it would be a huge win, and it would does it prevent all the dark scenarios and things? Can anything prevent that? I don't know. But I think every notch, every win, every speed bump you can that you want to put between that, uh, you know, I think that helps a lot.
Absolutely.
And it discourages people even thinking about it. It's like,
Look, it's in the
you
foundation, it's
know,
in the rebar, it's made law. Just,
yeah, put the sign outside that says
yeah,
security system
right,
in your house.
right. Go
You
bother
know,
somebody else.
put the light on. Yeah, go pick a fight somewhere else, man.
Well, so speaking of picking a fight, here's one. So
Oh,
if
let's roll, dude.
we were to go on to prediction markets, I kid, it's not really a fight, but prediction markets, and we're doing a prop bet on rolling back the Bank Secrecy Act. What are the odds on that one?
What are your odds? I have no idea.
Somewhere between 0 and 5, but I'm thinking of our friend Matt Odell and his very admirable, I think challenge that next it's roll back the BSA. I mean, and I'll ask that half jokingly, but I mean, do you think that sort of thing is necessary, or to your prior comments, can we get the Bitcoin Act, passed, and that gives us at least a strong foundation? In other words, how much does the Bank Secrecy Act allows God knows what to happen in the backgrounds, and it's in my view it is clearly extrajudicial surveillance. Maybe I shouldn't even have gone down this one, but I guess the question is, does something that seemingly unlikely need to happen to really unlock the freedom to use, or the lack of interference to use Bitcoin, or could the Bitcoin Act be a strong enough start?
Be honest with you. Um, I think you're asking the wrong guy.
Nah, it's
I'm
all right.
uh I don't know. To
Yeah,
be honest with you, I'm not gonna
that was a tough question. There've been a
that's
lot
a
of tough
deep
questions.
yeah, I just you know, I think I think getting Bitcoin Act done would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, and I asked
I
that,
don't
Stephen.
know
Yeah, not
that.
to put you too on the spot, but I
No, that's
guess
all
I
right.
guess as a lens into BPI's priorities, I presume if collectively BPI thought that was crucial or plausible or worth the investment, that it would be on the radar. It sounds like, unless it's simmering underneath, that's not a place where there's a lot of focus right now.
Well, I think that you should have Zach Shapiro or Matt Pines on to talk about that. That's all I'm saying.
Fair, fair.
I want to. I'm just. I want to do it justice, and you need to get one of our policy experts on
That's a
to
deep
really
that's
do
a deep
that,
rabbit
man.
hole. It's a deep rabbit
Uh,
hole.
you're you're uh you're going so far out my orbit, man.
Sorry about that.
But it's all good. I love it. I love the question, and I'd like to hear what I'd like
Yeah,
to hear what some
yeah.
others have to say.
We'll do it. Well, let's wrap up
I don't want to
here.
tell any tales outside of school that
No, no, no.
I'm
Fair,
not too
man.
familiar with.
What last note? What's keeping you bullish? What are you pumped about? What are you excited about? What's coming up that's got you it's got you hopeful.
I will talk my bag for a minute
Yeah,
here.
please.
Um, I and it's not just about you know um, BPI and promoting BPI. It's really not about that. But our summit is going to be unbelievable. Um, Bitcoin Policy Summit, Washington D.C., June 25th, and so I mean soon.
Yes.
Uh, and like I mentioned, Deputy Director CIA Michael Ellis is going to be there. Bo Hines, all the group. I think we have like 9 congressmen, uh, 3 or 4 senators speaking, um, and Hester Pierce. So
Mm.
from the political side, uh, massive. And this is our 3rd summit, and so I have the privilege of seeing this from, hey, should we do a policy summit? Like, what would that even be? Like, who would come to that? Uh, Bitcoiners don't know anything about policy, and policymakers don't know anything about Bitcoin. Is this a good idea? And it was like, well, that means it's a great idea. It's a
Yeah.
chance to bridge that gap, and that was kind of the goal. Um, FTX had just melted, nuclear meltdown, and everyone was suddenly a little familiar with Bitcoin, and they thought it was a massive fraud.
Hmm.
That was their
Hell of a way to
first
get started.
introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and it's like showing up the first day of school and you forgot to wear your pants, you know? It's like, great. First
Let's do this.
impressions. So we were like, we decided to lean into it a few years ago. FTX melted down and millions of people lost lots of money. Come to the summit and learn about Bitcoin. There's more to the story. That was kind of the thing. Like, let's just lean into it. Like, hey, this horrible thing happened, and we're not gonna hide it. But we think that if you learn about Bitcoin, I think you'll be surprised. And we brought in some of our fellows. We brought in everybody who would come, and we had a few hundred people show up, high quality. And it was awesome. It was an unbelievable day, and that made me really bullish on BPI. That was like my first year here, and to see early on, like, oh, there's real appetite in Washington to like kind of start to get your head around this. And there's real people, real Bitcoiners in Washington that were just like, finally, yes. People talking about mining and energy and national security and human rights. Like, this is awesome. And so last year we ran it back, and it was like, should America embrace Bitcoin? And America did, my friend.
Lo and behold.
America did. And so this year it's okay, America's embraced Bitcoin.
Now
Now
what?
what happens? What
Yeah.
happens next? And so we're going to more of a master's level. I think some of the questions you mentioned today, um, my job I see isn't necessarily to answer those questions, to
Sure,
have
sure.
great answers, but to find the people who have the best answers and get them in front of the people who are asking them. And so, apologize to your audience if they were hoping for a little
No.
more there. But I see myself as someone who goes out and helps find the, you know, find the guy and get them on stage with a U.S. senator and have that
SVP operations
conversation.
and strategy does not say
Yeah,
policy in it. So
yeah,
yeah,
it
the
doesn't.
apologies are from me.
Yeah, but listen, I think this year is going to be, it's gonna be awesome, man. We're doing it's gonna be 8 to 5, boom, 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 doing a series of 5 minute, like lightning keynotes, um, and it's gonna be high energy. I don't know how we've got so many incredible speakers. We're stacking them up. Um, and we're doing a day on the Hill on day 2, which we've never done. And we're going to flood the Hill with Bitcoiners talking to elected officials and kind of like just high signal. A lot of other groups do days on the Hill, uh, and they're kind of a thing you do as a trade association and trade group. But I think Bitcoiners are built different, and I'm really excited to see the impact of that day. Some days on the Hill are kind of a yawner, depending on who you put.
I might
You're
imagine.
only as good as your members there. And
Proof
so
of work, baby.
man, I'm actually really excited about that. I think at first I was like, I've been in so many days of the Hill, but this is going to be different. And so that's going to be awesome. We got some roundtables we're excited about. And man, we're also at a doubling our size in venue, doubling the size of the audience. We just did an event in March. I don't know if I told you this. We did this. I mean, I know I told you I did the event, Bitcoin for America, and it was like hyper focused on strategic Bitcoin reserve. It was a half-day event. We had over 1,000 people want to come to that, and we didn't even know we only had 200 seats, so we had to turn everybody away, a ton of people away, which was really sad. We just thought, hey, it's only we spun it up in 3 weeks. We're just we didn't do sponsors, we just said we're just going to do this event because it needs to happen, to help educate everyone and get everybody on the same page of what we want out of a strategic Bitcoin reserve and why we think it's important. And man, uh, it really blew up. So we already had the summit planned for June. So I told everybody, hey, come to the summit. It's a full day. It's gonna be a lot more fun. You get all the after parties and all that kind of thing. So if anybody wants to join, it's not too late. We do have some seats available, and you can go to btcpolicysummit.org, or you can just go to our website, uh, btcpolicy.org, and there's a link over there to go to the summit webpage, and get on the limit invite, and I'd love
Outstanding.
to have you.
I will
But I'm
endeavor to
bullish about that,
get
man.
this
Like, it's
published
gonna be
before.
sick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, thank you, Stephen. Thank you for today. Thank you for the work you do, and thank you to BPI. You're out there doing good, important, difficult work, and I am grateful, as I know many, many, many people are. So I look
I'm
forward.
grateful for you guys. I'm grateful for the community. We've existed solely as a charity off support, and the community's been very supportive. I love the. I'll say this: like, sometimes we get feedback, and
I bet you
not
do.
everybody agrees with everything we do. I love that too.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing about Bitcoin and this industry, is that um, we don't agree on everything. I think that's awesome. I think that's a feature, not a bug, and I'm really
Absolutely.
proud of that. And I'm proud that we still get things accomplished in spite of that. And so, some people, whatever, have different opinions about lots of different things. So keep it coming. I love reading the feedback, and even when it pisses me off, and I think it's wrong, I think it's great. I think that's one of my favorite things about being in the safe.
Awesome. Thanks again so much, Stephen. Have a great weekend and all the best for the summit. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Thank you, Sean, man. Good to see you.
You too,
Talk to you
buddy.
soon.